following is a production of Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world in 3, 2, 1. Mark.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another exciting edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. Holiday style, baby, it's Christmas! Woo! Lots of big stuff happening on the show tonight with that kind of theme in mind. Going to get to that here in just a second, as well as my usual partners in crime, Rob and Kevin. But before we do that, got to say thanks to our presenting sponsor. You know who it is. That would, of course, be Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's military, science fiction books, space opera books, urban fantasy books, heck, man, even paranormal romance. If you want to impress the missus, they got it all at Chris Kennedy Publishing. And you know where you can find out about it? At chriskennedypublishing.com. Go there, sign up for their mailing list, get hooked up with some free reads, learn about new authors, new series. Good Lord, they've got it all there. And again, it is at chriskennedypublishing.com. Why? Because they are message-free sci-fi with a slice, an ever-growing slice, I would add, of fantasy. So without further ado, let me bring in my other guys. Rob, Kevin, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. How are we doing this evening, fellas?
Doing great.
I'm doing great.
Kevin, how are things down in Georgia, man? Have you kind of starting to get over that Alabama loss? I mean, have you had a chance to kind of absorb it, digest it, you know, put it behind you, and move forward?
I have. You know, I knew we were going to be in the playoffs regardless of the game, and so we'll see what happens. They smoked us with their offense until they lost one of their wide receivers, and then their offense shut down. Yeah. And I don't know what that'll portray in the rest of the playoffs, but it did happen. So we'll see what happens.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, because Mechie's ACL is that's what he busted it, so he's going to have surgery. Poor kid.
We talked about it on our last show, actually, what would be if Georgia went up against Michigan in the postseason, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So it's going to be a fun time. But as is always the case this time of year, college bowls are happening, NFL is happening, family functions are happening, good food is happening. Why? Because it's the holidays. It is Christmas. It is all of those wonderful things that we love to celebrate here on the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. But one of the big things that I love about this time of year, and it means a lot to us, it means a lot in our family, and I'm thankful to my parents for making this a priority for us as kids growing up in my house, and that is that giving is a big part of the holidays. Yeah, it's fun to sit around the Christmas tree and drink eggnog, leaded or unleaded, whichever you prefer, you know, get in on some good victuals and enjoy that time, but it can't be all about receiving. It is always good to give, and we all write in military sci-fi, which is to say that we know a lot of vets in this house. And whether it's readers, whether it's other authors that we hang out with at conventions, that is a very, very, very big crowd to us and a crowd of utmost importance. So I was very fortunate through my day job, as it were, to get hooked up with tonight's guest who gave a great talk at my day job about what it is that she does. And so we're going to go ahead and bring her on now. Her name is Emily Bernson, and she is an outreach specialist with the USO of North Carolina. Emily, how are you doing this evening? Thanks for coming on board the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Did I get that right? Outreach special? I mean, for outreach specialist, like from what I gathered from your talk, you wear a lot of hats with what you do.
Yes, I definitely wear a lot of hats, which means that my official title doesn't always make sense. My official title is Center Operations and Programs Manager, but with that absolutely comes a lot of outreach.
Awesome. Well, you know, we have a lot of folks who listen to this show who know what the USO is. I would dare say just about everybody who listens to the show has at least heard that name, USO, all right, United Service Organizations. But they might not be terribly familiar with what exactly you guys do. From the top, let's talk a little bit about that. You guys are involved in a lot of stuff and all geared around one mission, and that is serving the troops of this country and their families. Talk about how that works.
So you are exactly spot on. The USO's mission is to strengthen America's military service members by keeping them connected to family, home, and country throughout the entirety of their service to the nation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And here in North Carolina, we have the great opportunity to serve the fourth largest military community in the country. And so we are really poised to see this mission through. And, we continuously adapt to changing needs of, the men and women in uniform. And we want to make sure that there's always a place for a service member at the USO.
I'll rock on. Well, now you guys are, just from what I gather from talking with you and then reading quite a bit more online, you guys have a lot of irons in the fires. I mean, everything from baby showers for families to, meeting folks at the airport to make sure that fallen service members are treated with the care that they deserve. Talk a bit about the big programs that you guys are a part of, how USO contributes to these causes and what their role in this is.
So what I think most people are likely the most familiar with is our airport centers. We offer, essentially it's a Delta Lounge, if you will, for service members at most major airports. And we just offer some hospitality for traveling service members. That's kind of the trademark of what a USO is. That's what most people can, attribute a memory or an association with the USO to. And outside of that, clearly outside of airports, there is a large military community, no matter where you are. And so we really community. And so here in North Carolina, we do that by focusing on some of our major installations, Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. And that is one of the areas that I manage, is that center at Seymour Johnson. And we really just kind of pivot to the needs that we see in the communities that we're serving. With COVID, that has definitely posed some challenges. We wanted to host an in-person baby shower for expecting moms at Seymour Johnson, but we had to switch to virtual, but we still had almost 75 mothers participate.
Wow.
So, we work with what we've got, we fill the need, and, we always just try to be there when needed.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that, and I'm glad you brought that up. The pandemic has changed so much about the way we as people get to interact, and I can imagine that put a serious damper on you guys' ability to do your jobs. So, but it's awesome to hear that, even when you had to go virtual, that you still had that kind of turnout. It speaks to just how much people recognize what you do and want to be a part of that. As mentioned, we're in the holidays here. And so that means a lot of giving programs, a lot of ways to reach out and get in touch with your community. In this instance, we're talking about, the troops and service members. You guys start your holiday giving season early, around Halloween or so. What does the timetable for that look like for people who might want to get involved in that next year? And what are some of the big, holiday-centered programs that USO offers?
So we do start our programming for the holidays pretty early, just around the tail end of Halloween. We start, collecting donations for, food bank type items to help families in need with, pantry staples for Thanksgiving. We really start gearing up for toy drives and holiday events during the first and second weekend in December, which is when most of those take place. And so really our prep starts as early as August, working with local partners to secure venues, to solidify donation requests, to make sure that we've got our game plan all set up so that we can respond to the needs at hand.
Wow. What about, and this was actually something that you touched upon in your talk, and this floored me because I had no idea that this was out there. You guys even offer video gaming centers now. That's something that's a huge deal to our listeners. We got gamers galore, and you guys take that space head on. How does that work?
Well, it works with the support of subject matter experts, let me tell you. I am no gamer myself. I can hardly turn the switches on and off. I can do the basics, but I am definitely no gamer. And so we really rely on our team here in North Carolina to make sure that things are going to run smoothly, that we have all of the materials we need, and, have the game plan set up. Our center at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base is actually the first USO center to have a standalone gaming center.
Okay.
We have over 10 stations that are fully decked out with the newest Xboxes. We have Switches. We are looking at getting VR equipment. We have Ataris for those of you that remember the Ataris. And so, we really are leaning into this because it is something that is such a high interest for our service members. And at Seymour Johnson, our center is located just across from the dorm. So single airmen will have a place to kind of come and build that community instead of feeling so isolated in their rooms alone.
How long ago, at what point did you guys start offering that as part of your strategy, the video gaming aspect of what you do?
Pretty recently, in the last 2 years. So obviously COVID had a pretty big impact in how we started to offer some of this. But the center in Goldsboro at Seymour Johnson opened November of 2019. And we were able to host a couple small tournaments. But right now, since COVID is definitely not past us by any means, but we are able to kind of work within some more restrictions. We are able to host some squadron level tournaments. We, keep the center open if, there's a large meeting date and people might want to take a little break between meetings or briefs. And so we're looking going into 2022 to offering pretty much monthly gaming programs, whether it's a small tournament, a leaderboard style tournament, a squadron level game night where it's, not a dramatic competition, but it's just a chance for them to unwind and have a little fun. And we're also gearing it not just towards the airmen, but also the kids and families. It's a chance for families to kind of connect together and have, a young kid, educate the parents on how to play certain games, and
Sure.
really connect on a different level.
Yeah, that never ceases to trip me out. I have a 15-year-old in my house, and he is routinely showing me and my wife how to do stuff. Whether it's on the computer, we just got a new TV. He's like, yeah, I can show you how that works if you want to stop looking like an idiot fumbling around with that remote control in your hands, dude. Mm-hmm. Just saying.
I had a 13-year-old try to teach me how to play Among Us during one of our game nights.
Okay.
At the beginning of 2021, we hosted some virtual Among Us game nights where we would connect on Zoom for the audio, but you would obviously play individually, and I just could not get the hang of that. I don't know what it was.
It's a trip that you would mention that. He was just talking to me about that game the other day. Yeah, it's wild. What are some of the other titles that are big winners with your crew? Do you know?
We just this past weekend started our holiday hangout at Seymour Johnson, and we offered the brand new Halo.
Okay.
I think it's Halo Infinite. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we try to keep everything up to date. We don't want to have the, archaic games, but some of those are actually able to be played on the Switch. Like we have Smash Bros. And Mario Kart and things like that are just kind of static crowd pleasers.
Yeah.
We definitely are leaning into Call of Duty, Fortnite, and like Madden and all that kind of stuff, some of the sports games
Madden.
as well.
Madden's classic, man. Madden is one of those ones that's just completely generational. That one is, I can date myself talking to you about how old I was when I started playing John Madden football on the Sega Genesis system. That's old school. So, now, USO is another thing that they're known for is occasionally you'll see some famous faces in the crowd. There are musicians, athletes, celebrities, people who will donate their time and ability to come out, and whether it's to put on a show for the troops or travel overseas or just to come visit a base. I know Gary Sinise of Forrest Gump. I just actually watched a documentary on that the other night about his foundation, and he travels to places like Fort Bragg or Seymour Johnson, and his band will play a concert or he'll just give a talk. Talk to me about some of the celebs who've come out and routinely spend their time donating to your cause. Who are some names that folks would know?
So one of our kind of most timely things that I'll reference is our Opry Live holiday program, and this was hosted by USO National. So we operate locally here in North Carolina, but we're part of a larger global organization, which is the USO. They were able to make a connection with the Opry, and we had a USO holiday special that is out now, and that features Carrie Underwood, Luke Combs, and a few other big names like Jesse James Decker and Craig Morgan. So, we really are lucky to be part of an organization that can really leverage some of those relationships and offer some really cool things. We've also, had some more topical programs offered through the same series. And so STEM to Space is a live Q&A that has General John Raymond and Cal Penn as a special guest. And so, we really kind of try to tie in some of these to some more topical, issues that our service members might be looking to learn more about.
Cool. Have you had any fun stories in your own experience, people you got to meet, or even better than that, just an experience that you've had personally while on the job that really hammers down in your own mind what the USO is all about? Any personal stories you want to share?
I haven't met any famous musicians or actors or anything like that, but, one of the things that happened very early on when I started with the USO was I was in our Raleigh-Durham Airport Center one day, and there was a service member that was on leave. He was deployed to Kuwait, and he was flying back home for leave to Florida to see his mother, and he was able to get an earlier flight. And so we were talking, there was supposed to be a 6-hour layover or something, and ended up being closer to 2. And he wanted to surprise his mother. And I thought, if you surprise your mother when she thinks that you're still in Kuwait, you don't know that she doesn't know you're coming home, you're going to give her a heart attack. She's going to be mad. She's going to be thrilled to see you, but you should warn somebody that you're going to do this. And so, I don't know what ended up happening when he made it back home, but 2 weeks later, when he was on his way back to Kuwait, he said, "You were right. My mom was so mad." It's that type of connection where, especially at an airport center, it's not frequent that you see the same people on both sides of their trip, just because of, the way that the center works and operates and the transient nature of travelers like that.
Sure.
But it happened so early on when I began working with the USO, and it was just so memorable because he really said, "You were right." She was furious that I surprised her because she couldn't get the house ready and she wasn't dressed right and all this type of stuff. And I was like, "I told you so."
Well, I did actually want to get my guys in here real quick. Kevin, I'll start with you first, man. Being a vet yourself, you've had some experience with the USO. Talk to me a little bit about how you've interacted with these guys in the past, man. You got any stories you want to share?
I do. Years ago I was stationed in Korea, and I say years ago because I had a break in my service. But in 1988, around Christmas, this was a time, obviously, before everybody had computers and could FaceTime and that kind of thing. So, your calls home were once a month, and it was, $40 to talk for 15 minutes. So, we look for things to do, especially during the holidays. And the USO brought in the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, and it was glorious. I had injured myself, and I had a really bad sprain, so I was in a cast. It was bad enough to need a cast. And so the cheerleaders, when we came in there to see them, were like, "Oh, sit down, sit with us. You can sit down." I sat right there among them. It was great. So that was going on. And then, of course, some concerts. Randy Travis came out and played right there on base, and that was USO sponsored. So it was in his heyday. So it was great. I really appreciate what they've done for us.
Awesome. I know the WWE is another one that is very heavily involved, and far be it from me to throw a plug to Vince McMahon, but that is one thing I will doff the cap to that organization for. We had Raj Giri a while back on this show, who's the purveyor of WrestlingInc.com, is a big player in that space and in that scene covering professional wrestling. And they've covered that extensively about just the number of shows that the WWE has done, whether it was through the USO or other organizations, of going overseas and putting on shows for a bunch of these guys and just giving them something to take their minds off of what they're there to do and just remind them just how much we appreciate back over here the opportunities that their service over there allows us to enjoy over here. So that's varsity, man. That is varsity level stuff. Rob, you got anything you want to add on this, man? I know you were obviously familiar with the USO. You got any stories or anything you want to throw out?
No stories, but I guess I have a question. Is there something you are hoping, something really special and cool that you're willing to divulge in this crazy show that we have, that you really would like to achieve someday working with the USO?
My personal goal for my area is to really develop a new relationship with the National Guard and Reserves. Those are, branches of, the Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, what have you. But they're not installation based. A National Guardsman is not, necessarily living in the Fort Bragg community. And so they receive a lot different resources, and their opportunities for guardsmen and reservists to participate in our programming is just a little bit different because of the dynamic, and it's something that I really want to improve in my area. It's a big focus of mine, and to make sure that they are still members of the armed services. They're still part of our mission of who we want to serve as the USO, and it's a real priority of mine to kind of work to improving the services for the National Guard and Reservists.
Cool.
That's really cool. I wish you the best of luck on that. My dad served in the National Guard for a little bit after getting out of his active duty way back when. Mm-hmm. And so that's awesome. Thank you.
It's a very interesting dynamic because you have a civilian job, and once a month you travel and drill and train with your unit, and you might deploy, you might not, you might get activated for a weekend, 2 weeks. Through COVID, we've had some units activated of National Guardsmen for extended periods of time, but the challenges are different for a Guard or Reservist family. There's less resources available in some ways, there's more available in other ways, and there's just some unique challenges, and it's something that I'm very passionate about kind of working through.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So, well, Emily, I think we're starting to kind of come down to the end of our time here, but we really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about all of the cool stuff that's happening with not only USONC, but the USO, at large. Mm-hmm. I want to make it abundantly clear to our listeners who did not pick up on this at the outset of this conversation. Guys, the USO is not a federal entity. All right. They do not get your tax dollars to do their
Correct.
job, to do their mission. They are a nonprofit organization. That means they ride and die on fundraising, donations, and volunteer time. That means us. That means you guys. So if there is a way you can find, to plug in, you won't find an organization better suited to be able to reach out to those folks than the USO. So, having said that, Emily, if folks want to know where they can get involved locally or nationally, where are the best places to go to find information on how they can plug in?
The best place is to start with our website. If you are local to North Carolina like I am, you can visit us at northcarolina.uso.org. You can take a look at our event calendar, our programs, and our centers, and kind of, poke around there. You can also donate online as well through that site. If you are not located in North Carolina, you can go ahead and start with uso.org/centers. You can search for centers in your area to see how you can connect to them directly. And if you are interested in volunteering at any center worldwide, you can visit volunteers.uso.org, and you can click, I think it says register here, and you can, search by your zip code, by your state, what have you, and find a center close to you and kind of engage that way if you're open to volunteering.
Awesome. And guys, I would also point out that most of the folks or most of the groups that she's talking about within the USO have their own social media presence. So for all of our North Carolina listeners, and we got a lot of those, go follow them on social media. And when there's news, when there's announcements, when there are calls for opportunities, you can find a lot of that information via that way as well. So Emily,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again for coming on the show. God bless you guys and what it is that you're doing out there. We love you and your mission, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck moving forward. Happy holidays to you, all right?
Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
And that will bring us down to our halftime segment, where, as we are wont to do, we give yet another shout-out to our grand, wonderful sponsors. That would be the good folks at Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's military sci-fi, of which there is a plenty here lately. We've also got space opera, we got urban fantasy, we got romance, we got high fantasy. Pretty much you name it, they got it at Chris Kennedy Publishing. Why? Because they are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. Go there, check them out on the interwebs at chriskennedypublishing.com. Also, don't forget to follow them on Facebook via their CKP, The Factory Floor, and 4HU Merc Guild groups. Tons of information there. Plus, just about every author on the CKP roster is involved in those groups, which means if you got questions about our characters, about our stories, and you want to ask us, then you can do it. And it's all right there in the CKP Facebook groups. Again, that's CKP, The Factory Floor, and 4HU, the Merc Guild, for those of you who just want to hang out with fellow Mercs. So new stuff on tap this week. Speaking of the 4HU, that is in fact our new release. We are getting to the goods, folks. We have out this week the brand new book from Casey Azell and Marisa Wolf called Ally. This is the penultimate book in the Guild Wars series. Tempest Rage, which is right around the corner from Chris Kennedy and Mark Wandry. That's going to be on the way out. But this is the one that sets the table, folks. And again, that's Ally with Casey Azell and Marisa Wolf. Not going to have reviews on this one, guys, because we're recording this the night before that book goes live. So there aren't any to give you. But just trust me. This is the penultimate book in the Guild Wars, and it's from freaking Casey and Marisa. It's going to rock. But in the meantime, we do have a description for you. So, Rob, what's this book all about, man?
Well, it's better to live free or to die free than to live a slave. When the Mercenary Guild try to bend the galaxy's deadliest assassins to their will, the Depic shock the galaxy by choosing mass suicide to enslavement. Only those Depic not present on their home planet of Katash survive to retreat to the shadows, to plan, to form alliances, to rebuild, and to look forward to the day when they could retake their home from the Vitano invaders and exact revenge. That day has finally come, and this time the Depic do not stand alone.
There you go. Hey, just a heads up, guys, for those of you who want an early taste of this book, slide on over to the CKP Patreon page and check out the latest episode of CKP Confidential, where you'll get an exclusive read from Ally from one of the co-authors themselves. That would be Marisa Wolf. She did a splendid job on that. This story sounds really, really, really good. Other stuff happening around the world of CKP right now. Audio abounds, folks. Speaking of 4HU, we'll stay there. Right now we have The Ravening of Wolves by our very own dude himself, Rob Howell. That is, of course, book 6 in the 4HU Saga series. Again, out on audio now, so wherever you consume that, Audible, etc., go there, find it, and live it up. Those folks do a great job reading those. Also on audio out this week, we've got The Moon and Beyond from John E. Sears. That is book 1 of the Lunar Free State series, which I can't wait to crack into that. I'm really glad they finally put out the first book in that in audio so I can go check it out. Speaking of John, he was a guest on CKP Confidential not too long ago. Had a chance to really chat with him off mic about his story and a lot of the stuff that guy has seen and experienced in life that finally brought him at age 72, 74, something like that, whatever he is now, to actually writing his first story. And man, there's a lot of good stuff in there. So I'm really excited to check that out. Again, that is The Moon and Beyond by John E. Sears, book 1 in the Lunar Free State series, out now in audio.
Can I add something about The Ravening of Wolves?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Ravening of Wolves is book 6 in the 4-issue saga series, but it's actually a direct sequel to The Feeding of Sorrows, which is also available on audio. If you want those two books and hear them back to back, Ravening of Wolves literally starts the day after the events in The Feeding of Sorrows.
Nice. Well, you know, I did take a peek at the pod mail questions coming up later on in the show. And we do have a question from a young lady asking questions about audio books. So, Rachel, keep that in mind. Ravening of Wolves and Feeding of Sorrows. And then, of course, The Moon and Beyond, all out right now on Audible. So it'll make that drive nice and smooth for you. But we'll get to her shortly. I want to get back to our open segment, which typically kind of comes after halftime. For folks who are new to the show, and we certainly appreciate you hopping on board the bandwagon, this is the segment where we just kind of talk a little bit about what's going on with ourselves, with our writing, any writing projects that we've got going on, any events that are being added to our calendar, just if there's news in the world of writing and publishing that has to do with the three of us. This is kind of where we spit it out there for fans to know. Kevin, you got anything going on over in Salvage these days, man? What's the word with you, or anything else you got happening?
Well, and we'll touch on it here in a little bit, but there's a giveaway right now. Salvage Title is free on Kindle. If you guys want to grab it, run and grab it. It's I mean, you don't get an orange tag when it's a free book, but it's sitting at number 1 on several charts in a handful of countries right now.
Sweet.
So it's kind of cool. For free books on Amazon, last time I looked, I want to say it was sitting at number 277 on all Amazon.
Awesome.
So
yeah, so if you wanted to crack into the Salvage Title universe, folks, if you want to get the book that started it all, it's free right now on Amazon. And by the time this show goes live on Friday, which will be tomorrow, December the 17th, that should still be free. So go check that out. Yeah. Rob, anything happening with you these days?
Lots, actually. I am about 60,000 words into my next novel, The Door into Winter, which will be my first entry into the Eldros legacy as it is now exists. It does, in fact, now exist. The Eldros legacy, first novel in that came out a week ago Tuesday, and that was Khyven the Unkillable by Todd Fonestock. And I'm in the midst of working on the third book. The second book is pretty much ready to go. And that's Seeds of Dominion by Quincy J. Allen. The third book is Embers and Ash, and that's from Marie Whitaker. Following that will be The Forgotten King by Mark Stallings. And then The Door into Winter, which I am really enjoying writing. I'm also taking a little bit of time to write a short story right now. I do a freebie short story for everybody who's on my mailing list. And it's a series of urban fantasy, sort of Christmassy private eye stories. I've basically taken Santa Claus, made him a hard-boiled private investigator, and had some fun playing around with those kind of stories for the Christmas season. So I send that out to everybody on my mailing list around Christmas time. And I'm about done with that. And it's fun and it's cutesy, and I get to play around with some silly things with Santa Claus and his elves. Can't forget his elves because, they all have their roles. They have, the guy who's Q, who is makes all the toys, and the guy who checks the list, that's Alabaster Snowball. He's the intel guy, and one horse open sleigh. That's actually his name. I didn't make up these names. They're actually, these are the traditional names. He is, of course, the driver of the getaway sleigh, and so on down the line.
Awesome. Well, I've actually got news this time around. I've been kind of teasing this for a little bit of a while, so I guess now's as good a time as any to go ahead and spit it out there, guys. My next novel is getting ready to kick off, and it's taken a bit of world-building time to put together for a lot of different reasons, but it is going to be called The Last Argonaut, and it is set in the Salvage Title universe established by the dude Kevin Steverson, and I'm really excited about it. As previously kind of talked about on the show and teased a bit, it's going to take me back into my skills as a sports writer. This is going to be a very sports-centric story. For those who follow the Salvage Title universe, you've heard a lot about the sport of warball and how that works and how it's basically just a mashup of everything from football to hockey to MMA to you name it. And it's been talked about. It's been mentioned. There's even reference to Harmon being an ex-player. Well, now we're going to finally show you what war ball looks like in the form of the professional version of the sport. And so I've spent the last several weeks kind of putting together what that looks like, designing the rules of the game, designing how the sport is governed, how clubs come about, rivalries. I mean, just building the culture that is professional war ball as it's established in the Salvage Title universe. So I think we're good to go. For people who have read my anthology stories, this story is going to be set on a planet called Akala. So if you go back and read any of the 3 anthologies that I'm a part of, I set all of those stories on this world. So if you want kind of a little bit of a taste of, what the setting is going to be for this story, go check those out. And that's Through the Gate, Salvage Conquest, and then It Takes All Kinds. Here recently I had one in that one too. So really, really excited about this one. Kevin, I'll go ahead and pitch back to you for just a second. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I did want to kind of pick your brain because you're the creator, and you have seen the, you've seen the Bible that I sent you, or the rule book for War Ball. What do you think, man? Am I on the right track for this?
Oh yeah, you're on the right track, and now, unfortunately, I have to wait to read it, which is a steaming pile of poo. But I got to wait just like everybody else to read it. But I will get to read it first because I do read every word in my universe before it even goes to the publisher. So
you will get to read it first.
Yeah, so that's I get to read it first. Anyhow.
Yep. So really, really excited about this one, guys. Other big news that I've got to drop on this episode. Looks like I'm going to be a guest at Pensacon in Pensacola, Florida, coming up. I think it's the final weekend in February.
Nice.
I'm going to be there hanging out with Kevin Eikenberry, and it looks like my boy Nick Steverson is going to be tagging along on that one as well. And we're going to be hanging out over in Bard's Tower. So I'm not sure what panels and all that kind of stuff looks like because this just happened this week, so a lot of the logistics are still being worked out, but we're going to get that ironed down. And Pensacon is a con I've wanted to be a part of for quite some time, and now that it's right down the road from me in Pensacola, really excited to go check that out and be a part of that.
When is that again?
That is end of February. I want to say it's February 22nd. I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I don't have my planner here. But yeah, so it's I believe it's around then.
One more alibi on the old, if you're done, one more alibi on the old open segment.
Yeah.
There are a total of 7 books now in German, in the German language, up for pre-order or out. We just put the first 4 in the Four Horsemen up for pre-order now. First one comes out on the 22nd.
Awesome.
Rights.
So I saw Chris talking about that on social media just the other day.
A lot of work going on over there. It's occupying a little bit of time, but it's all worth it in the long run. So
nice.
So the 4HU is going to be worldwide.
Sweet. Yeah, CKP International, folks. It is a thing and going to be a thing for some time to come. So, alrighty, well, that is going to bring us down to our pod mail segment, which is where we hear from you, the listeners. So what say we get to those, shall we?
You've got mail.
Alrighty, as always, if you would like to submit a question to the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast, it's very easy to do. We have a plethora of ways for you to do it. You can, first and foremost, email the show at dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. You can also follow Shark Flight Media on Facebook and Twitter and reply to any of our content there. Or, I mean, heck, if you just want to tweet at myself, Rob, or Kevin, throw in a hashtag Dudes in Hyperspace so we know what you're talking about, and we're happy to include your question on the show. But email address again, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Very simple. Facebook and Twitter at Sharkflight is the handle you need to find Shark Flight Media over there. And come find us. We love hearing from you guys. Before I get to questions, though, I did want to take a second to remind folks, or tell folks who didn't know, the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors is the proud sponsors of our Pod Mail segment. These are folks you want to know, guys. They got stuff going on. Whether you're an author looking to build community, whether you're a reader looking for new books, new authors, new series to check out, they're here for all of you guys, man. Just go to iasfa.org and check it all out. Speaking of, you'll definitely want to go there in the next day. Again, this podcast is probably going to drop on Friday, December the 17th. They currently have a huge space opera book giveaway going on that ends on the 18th. So if you're hearing this on Friday or Saturday, get there by midnight and check it out. We're talking 25 books in this thing, guys, from everybody from Craig A. Price to Lawrence M. Shewan. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Don't come get me. Lots of other folks, including some guy named Kevin Steverson. I'm pretty sure Salvage Title is a part of that as well. So go there and check it out. Again, that's iasfa.org. You'll see it right there on the homepage. Go sign up. It's the December Space Opera book giveaway, and you cannot go wrong with that. I mean, for crying out loud, folks, who doesn't love free books at Christmas time, huh? All right, first question comes to us from Miles. I think we can all safely agree that the consensus opinion among the listeners of this show is that Die Hard is, in fact, a Christmas movie. Now that we have that fact put to bed, what are some of your other Christmas favorites around this time of season? Rob, you got any Christmas movies you like to dial in when you're hanging out with the missus or just by yourself?
Honestly, I'm more of a Christmas music guy.
Okay.
But I will say this. Some of the old traditionals, like Miracle on 34th Street, always gets me. And then, of course, A Christmas Story. Can't go wrong with, the Red Ryder rifle and, getting your friend to stick their tongue onto a pole. And, of course, then there's the lamp, the great lamp.
Awesome. So, Kevin, how about you, man? You got any Christmas favorites?
Well, I got one, and I, just like we all know Die Hard is a Christmas movie, I think Home Alone is a Christmas movie because of the time frame when it occurs. I think Home Alone is a Christmas movie, and I like to watch it at least once a year.
All right, cool. Well, then you're going to be happy because Disney Plus is putting out a Home Alone series. So I have no idea how that's going to work or what they're going to do or if they're going to dig out old Macaulay Culkin from somewhere. But, yep, there is going to be, if it's not out already, it's coming very shortly, a Home Alone Christmas series streaming on Disney Plus. So you can go check that out. I know everything is a reboot or a retread now. It just is what it is. Folks at Disney, if you want some new material, come find us. Just seriously, sharkflight.com/dudes. That's where you can find the show. Reach out to us. We got tons of stuff to give you guys. Seriously, we'll make you famous. Us, you, we'll make it happen. Let's see, on my list of things, Die Hard, obviously. You can't ever go wrong with Die Hard, or Die Hard 2 for that matter. Other stuff, Elf is always a classic in our house. Will Ferrell's kind of a one-trick pony. Like, he really only has one speed, but he does that speed well, and you won't find it better than he did in Elf, which is a classic in our house. Lethal Weapon, the original with Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, is actually set at Christmas. Probably not considered a Christmas movie, even less so than Die Hard for a lot of folks, but it is for me, and I always enjoy watching it this time of year. Of late, Fat Man. That one came out last year.
Yeah.
Where
Yes.
Mel Gibson plays Santa, and Walton Goggins is a hitman who's pissed off and goes to kill him. It's a dark comedy, to be sure, but it's freaking hysterical. And two great
I like
actors.
the movie. I enjoyed it.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Dude, Walt Goggins is fantastic. I mean, Gibson is what he is, man. If you've seen the guy over the years, he's a fantastic actor. Goggins, though, is just great. I mean, freaking A. Go watch Justified. That guy's incredible. All righty, next question comes to us from Ryan. So much for Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, huh? As a Jags fan myself, I'm glad to see the experiment end rather than stoking the dumpster fire for an extra 2 to 3 years down the line. Have you guys ever seen a coaching tenure end so quickly and so ugly? If so, with which team and coach? Also, who are your top picks to replace Meyer as the Jags' new head coach? Rob, you're kind of the resident NFL guru, man. What are your thoughts on this whole situation and what could be coming next?
Well, I don't know. I can't think of a more egregious example of a bad fit.
Sure.
And a lot of that, of course, is because it's Urban Meyer, and I think he's a bad fit for the NFL and always have thought so. I also think very little of his willingness to go the long haul, given his college track record. So I'm not surprised, although I did expect him to go one full year. It's kind of rare for an owner to admit he'd made that much of a mistake. But honestly, Urban was so bad and so off the rails that
when the pilot angles the nose of the plane straight to the ground, you kind of know how that's going to end. You don't need to wait to see how that's going to pan out. You need to get him out of there now, and that's what they had.
Yeah, it's really, really awful. As to who will replace him, that's actually a much more positive thing. Were I the Jaguars, I would go after two people, and then there's a third who's on people's radar. The first person I would go after is Eric Bieniemy. He is the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. He has been overdue for a head coaching job because NFL rules don't allow teams to go look at assistant coaches while their team is currently in the playoffs, or that it was the rule. That rule has been since relaxed, and they could theoretically go to Bieniemy and say, "Hey, we're interested." I think Bieniemy is a stunningly good offensive coordinator, one of my favorites. He's going to be a fantastic. I mean, he is a fantastic offensive mind. Obviously, we never know if a coordinator is going to be a great head coach until they actually take the job. But I'd be willing to risk it for Eric Bieniemy. The second guy is already got a bunch of Jaguars connections, and that's Brian Leftwich. I think he also is a really sharp mind. He's a great fit for them simply because of his background with the Jaguars. And the third fit is another offensive coordinator, and that's Kellen Moore, the Cowboys. I certainly hope Kellen Moore stays with the Cowboys because he's done a fantastic job. And it may be too soon for him to turn into the next head coach. He will be a head coach someday, I suspect. But I think the key thing, if I'm the Jaguars, is you'll note that all three of them are offensive guys. They've got Trevor Lawrence.
Sure.
And you got to build the coaching staff to make sure that he can maximize his potential in the NFL.
Yep.
So those are the three I would go with. I would go with Bieniemy first, Leftwich second, and Moore third.
All right. Kevin, how about you, man? What was your take upon reading the headline late last night? You were actually the one who sent me this right out of the gate. It was waiting in my inbox whenever I got up this morning at about 4:30. What was your take when you first read that?
Well, the one thing that got me is where he actually kicked the kicker, in talking to him. And people saw that. And when the kicker announced it and talked about it, it wasn't 12 hours later. He was gone.
Yeah.
Because, there were witnesses. There's none of this, I didn't do that or whatever.
Yeah. Well, he said that. Like, Meyer is on record as saying there are witnesses around who can back up that didn't happen. Apparently those witnesses were nowhere to be found.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's out of there. And I agree with Rob. I'm glad they've relaxed that rule about talking to assistants during the playoffs because, listen, if the team's good and you're doing well, you're in the playoffs, and then the slot gets filled by somebody else who's not doing so well.
Sure.
And it was, you're looking to be a dang head coach somewhere, yet your team's always in the playoffs because you do a good job.
Sure.
That's come on.
Yep.
So I'm glad they relaxed that because that wasn't right. And it has happened in the past where somebody didn't get a shot.
How about any replacements? You got any guys on your list that you would go hire if you were the GM of the Jags?
I don't have any replacements in mind, but I will tell you this, okay? It needs to come from an offense or defensive coordinator, whether he's an ex-coach or not, in the NFL. Don't go grabbing those college coaches because it rarely works out.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. This was definitely – it wasn't a shocker when it came down. It would have been – heck, we had Nick Gurley on from the Right On Sports podcast for our football preview to kick off the year. We talked about Urban Meyer and whether or not this was going to fly. And we were all skeptical, but everybody figured, okay, well, historically, you're going to at least get 2 to 3 years to blow it, right? Which we all expected that he would. But we didn't figure nobody could have seen this coming. But now by the time we got to this weekend and the story with, I think it's Josh Lambo, the kicker, got out there, they didn't have any choice. Had the thing in Cincinnati with him feeling up and copping a feel on the co-ed not happened, I think he could have survived this. But this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And you know what? Shad Khan, this is kind of what you get for surrounding yourself with people who don't know football. He has not hired good GMs. He has not hired GMs that know how to run an organization, and they've made bad hires for coaches. So, there's no other way to slice it. All right. You track that record back 10 years, look at the picks, look at the coaches, look at the abject, unmitigated disaster that has been the Jacksonville Jaguars. And at some point, the buck stops with leadership. So, I don't know what to tell you, Shad Khan. Maybe you should step aside and let somebody else run your franchise because your calls aren't making it. Having said that, I do wish the Jacksonville Jaguars well, now that Urban Meyer is out of the way. I said it at the beginning of the season. I'll say it again. I will never root for a team where Urban Meyer is a coach. If he came to Tallahassee and coached Florida State, I'd wear a Campbell University hat from North Carolina until he was fired. I don't have any respect for the man, and I don't have any respect for his record. I think he's what's wrong with sports in a lot of ways. But back to the on the field. I root for the Jacksonville community because they have been the laughingstock of the NFL for years. I mean, dating all the way back to when they hosted a Super Bowl, and logistically they really weren't ready to have an event of that magnitude. Pretty much the entire world scoffed at Jacksonville as, a town full of rednecks. It just can't get anything right. And that's not the case. It's a great city. So, they finally have a quarterback that I think is a generational talent. I think, you get what's his face back, the Travis Etienne, who blew out his knee in the season that was from Clemson. They got some tools in the toolbox. Now you need to go get somebody who truly knows how to put those to use. I'm with Rob. I think Eric Bieniemy is the first guy you call. I would very much love to be a fly on the wall to hear, what his philosophy would be, grooming Trevor Lawrence to be, an elite NFL quarterback. I'm not terribly high on Byron Leftwich. I'm a Tampa guy, so I've obviously seen what he's done there. I would like to see what Byron Leftwich can do without Tom Brady. I'd like to see just how well that offense runs without the greatest quarterback in history pulling the trigger. That's kind of my only question mark on Byron Leftwich. That, and he didn't exactly set the world on fire in Jacksonville as a quarterback. He was a first-round pick, was a little bit of a disappointment, and the fan base remembers that. They like him, but they just remember that he was yet another on a long line of failing quarterbacks in their town. I know this isn't going to be popular, but I'll say it anyway. I kicked the tires on Josh McDaniels. I know he ended pretty sourly in Denver, but we've seen this guy do it with Tom Brady. We saw him squeeze a little bit of juice out of Cam Newton last year, and now we're seeing what he can do with Mac Jones, who is, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, is there anybody else even competing with him for Rookie of the Year?
On the offensive side?
Yeah.
Probably not. On the defensive side, that question has already been determined as well. And that was going to Micah in Dallas.
So, McDaniels has proven that the guy does it generation in and generation out. I think the hope is that he learned from his mistakes in Denver, and now he's primed to take another swing as an older, wiser version of himself at being a head coach. And give him a guy like Trevor Lawrence, and let's see how that could end. That's a very long conversation that I would have to have with him to find out if he's that guy and has made those changes. But again, I would take a flyer on him and see what he's got to say.
Here's my bias against Josh McDaniel. I really don't like what he did to Indianapolis.
Okay.
All those things that we talked about with respect to Urban Meyer in terms of not following through. I don't know if you recall, it's not been that long, though, since Josh McDaniels accepted the job
in Indianapolis. Yeah.
And then backed out.
Yeah. No, that's an extremely valid point. And again, if you're Jacksonville ownership, those are the questions that you have to ask.
Yes.
You are doing your fan base a disservice if you don't bring that up in the interview and say, what the hell happened? Is there something here that we don't know about? If so, explain it to us. Because people are going to ask questions, and we want to know right now what your answer is going to be. Absolutely. I'm speaking strictly of his resume on the field as a head coach. He is by far the most experienced of all the candidates that we've talked about from top to bottom. And he's got head coaching experience. So that was my only take. There's a reason why he is my dark horse. And again, it is his decision-making abilities off the field that I think you got to bring into question. On the heels of Urban Meyer, that's not going to happen.
Point out one other thing. The NFL loves its coaching trees, right? It loves looking at the coaches that have been trained. Andy Reid trained Eric Bieniemy, for example, and that's a major factor in his favor. Sean Payton was trained by Bill Parcells, and on down the line.
Another guy who made some shady decisions with franchises.
Well, yeah, but he was actually a really good coach. The point I'm getting at is if you look at Bill Belichick's coaching tree, the ones that have come from him, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's very bad. Whatever magic Bill Belichick has, it's not been able to translate to the Matt Patricias of the world. Josh McDaniels in his first time. He's Bill Belichick is clearly one of Hall of Fame coach, no doubt. But those who've come after from his tree, they haven't done well.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think Josh McDaniels is as prime a candidate as one would think. Yes, he's done some great jobs as coordinator as part of that one system, but the way he looked at the Broncos when he had a chance to coach there, and the way he handled the Colts, I don't think too highly of him.
Fair enough. Next question comes to us from Rachel. Hey, fellas, the Hubster and I have a 15-hour drive ahead of us to do Christmas with my in-laws in Charlotte. Any suggestions on audiobooks that we can download to help us pass the time during the ride? Cheers in advance and happy holidays. Well, we talked about a couple right off the top, and that would, of course, be The Feeding of Sorrows, The Ravening of Wolves, and The Moon and Beyond from John E. Sears, other two obviously being from Rob Howell. As far as other stuff goes, audiobooks, man, I'm a huge fan of the Joe Ledger series from Jonathan Mayberry. Those are a blast to read. Great characters, great stories, but a great narrator in Ray Porter, who is one of my favorites. Joe Ledger's a very snarky, sarcastic character, very a la John McClane, Martin Riggs kind of a ilk, and Ray Porter nails it. Just hilarious delivery. So can't go wrong with those. The Dresden books, read by what's-his-face from Buffy the Vampire, James Marsters, also a great read, great listen if you're into more of the urban fantasy thing. Rob, do you do the audiobook thing from time to time, whether it's on the road or otherwise?
I do. One comes to mind, and that's Larry Correa's Grim Noir Chronicles, which is Bronson Pinchot is the narrator for that. And
Valky Bartakamus points to anybody who gets that reference.
Yes, it's exactly the right.
The Dance of Joy.
And yet, for all that's a silly reference of times past, he's really good as a narrator of
He's
books.
a good actor, man. That guy's shown up in a lot of B stuff. He's got chops way outside of Perfect Strangers.
Yep. And the other thing I've been listening to a lot of lately, I mean, I listen to a lot of stuff, but epic poetry, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Kalevala, Beowulf, all of that stuff that we were forced to read, may have been forced to read, I'm one of the few that actually liked it. But I'll tell you, I liked reading it all, but I love hearing it. And part of that is that stuff was designed to be presented orally.
Yeah.
It is so fun to hear these cadences and the rhythms that they've put into these words actually come out.
Yep.
I get inspired by heroic poetry quite often. I mean, it really gets me going. Yes, I'm strange, but there's really a neat jazz to the kind of energy that when you hear, for example, Beowulf ripping Grendel's arm off or something like that, but hearing it as opposed to just reading it.
Well,
so it's
I'll
a different one.
I'll do you one further on that because we have a lot of writers who listen to this show. Dude, it'll impact how you write dialogue. You know, you touch on a cadence and syntax. Dude, it will totally inform how you write dialogue. When you can hear it in your head, you know you're really onto something.
And one more poetry thing. If you just kind of want a glossing of poetry, John Lithgow did an audio version of, I don't know how many poems, but he basically got all of his acting buddies like Morgan Freeman and a bunch of others and just said, hey, let's go read poetry. And apparently he loves poetry and picked a bunch of the greatest poems of all time and had Susan Sarandon, a bunch of other big name actors and actresses read these poems. It's really good. It's an amazing listen. Again, if you've never listened to poetry before or read much poetry, these things are brilliant when presented well.
That actually reminds me, Rob, and one other thing I'll throw into my list. When World War Z was released from Max Brooks, was turned into a movie a number of years back, which was absolutely awful. They did a re-release of the audiobook for the Max Brooks novel and brought in an all-star cast to read from it. So every one of those interviews, if you've read World War Z and you know what it is, basically it's a giant collection of interviews with people who watched the Z war happen and then the aftermath. Every one of those interviews is read by a different actor. So you've got Nathan Fillion, you've got Mark Hamill, you've got Jerry Ryan, you've got Henry Rollins. Martin Scorsese stops in and does a read. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So if you're looking for one that will just blow your socks off and really show you just how cool the audio platform can be for fiction, World War Z is it. Kevin, you guys ever plug in audiobooks when you're hitting the road to go to cons and whatnot?
It's usually just music. But there's a poem, The Highwayman, that has been turned into a song, and it's on YouTube or whatever. I think I've sent that link to Rob, and we really like that one. Cool. But yeah, it's mostly music.
You have, and it's great.
Yeah,
cool.
So.
Well, speaking of music, that actually ties nicely into our next question, which comes from Devin. Weird Al just announced that he's got a huge tour of something like 130 cities. Are you guys going? Also, what are your favorite Weird Al songs? Rob, you're a big Weird Al guy. You want to tackle this one? Are you going to the show?
Probably. He is in Topeka, which is fairly close to my house. He's also in downtown Kansas City. It's actually about the same difference, but if I go to Topeka, I don't have to drive in downtown KC. That's late August, early September. I'm likely to go. I don't think I'm going to get the meet and greet VIP tickets. They're like $300 and some though. Sad to say. But yeah, he is an amazing performer. I was really lucky to see him at Massey Hall, which is an old opera house in downtown Toronto, and it's an incredible building for acoustics. It's also very Victorian and Edwardian. It's a really neat place. And I got to see him there, and I'll tell you, he just blows your socks off. He's an incredibly performer. He's really skilled. Their musicianship, when you really break it down, the whole band, they're quite talented. And in a sense, it's a shame that they're kind of remembered for the covers, like A Surgeon and all that stuff. But they couldn't pull any of that off if they weren't damn good at what they do with their instruments. So,
sure. Kevin,
I'm excited.
Kevin, were you ever a Weird Al guy?
I am. I love a good parody, and he is the best at it. He really is, and he is super talented. I've always said if he ever wrote his own stuff and his band performed and did his own songs, it would do well. It's just he just doesn't do that, and he does the parodies. But yeah, Rob is right. And having been a tour manager and been with bands and seen all kinds of talent, that band is very talented. He's very talented just to do what he does, because they don't necessarily change genres per se, but they do. You know what I mean? Because it could be, a rock song, a metal song, a more pop, and more. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah, you got to be extremely talented in order to be able to play in his band. Very rangy. I've never seen him live, but I've met the man in person. He put out a children's book a number of years ago and was on a book tour and came to Raleigh. So my wife is a huge Weird Al nut, and so she was like, "We're going." I said, "All right, cool. We go meet Weird Al." And to that guy's credit, man, I mean, the line was around the block. He stayed there until every single person that was in line got something signed. We didn't get to him until just shy of midnight. We were toward the back end of the line, and he waited for us. And we chatted for just a split second. I was like, "Dude, how is your hand?" He's like, "It's killing me." But very, very just a graceful gentleman. Again, was very warm, very cool to all of his fans, stuck around until the closing bell. It was just a super nice guy. Still got the picture. Real quick, we'll go around the Robin. Rob, I'll start with you. What's your favorite Weird Al song?
Oh, geez. All About the Penny. No. Amish Paradise. No. White Nerdy. Too many. Let's go Albuquerque. The whole long one with the video.
All right.
Because I hate sauerkraut.
Kevin, favorite Weird Al song?
God, I don't know. Maybe another one, Rides the Bus, or maybe My Baloney. I don't know. There's a list.
Another one, Rides the Bus, was the first one. That was the one that started it all.
Hey, nice. He's gonna sit by you.
I'm going to dig way back into the Wayback Machine for a B-side, and I'm going to go with Dare to Be Stupid off of the original Transformers the movie soundtrack, circa 1986, man. I was a huge Transformer kid. Like, I had Optimus Prime. I had all that stuff. I remember watching Transformers the movie and being absolutely distraught because they killed him. But anyway, yeah, Weird Al was on that soundtrack. He did the kind of the theme song for the Junkticons, which was hysterical. And only Weird Al could have written a song that fit that group of characters. But it was awesome. I still actually have that album, that soundtrack album, on my iPhone through the music service that I use. So yeah, Dare to Be Stupid, man. Transformers the movie, 1986. It's freaking fantastic stuff. Okay, final question comes to us from. Oh, hang on, I lost my questions here. Final question comes to us from Caleb. I know a lot of folks love to roll out with the big dinner spread at Christmas, but in our house, it's all about the breakfast, baby. We're talking bacon, sausage, eggs, biscuits, the whole enchilada, sometimes literally. What about you guys? Are you morning people Are you morning people or evening people with your Christmas traditions? Also, what's on the menu? Kevin, how about you, man? Does the Steverson family do Christmas breakfast, brunch, dinner, all the above? What's the deal?
It's really a little later than lunch. We all sleep in, unless the grandkids are here. But now the children are older, we sleep in. And my wife, we fix something. It's always something Mexican, whether I'll do enchiladas or, something like that, chimichangas or just something like that. It's always been that way. We don't know why. We started it years ago, and we always do it here at the house.
Cool. Rob, how about you, man? Any Christmas food traditions?
Well, the odd one is, and this is because I was impatient as a kid to unwrap presents. I'm sure that will shock nobody. But my mom made the rule very early on in when I was growing up. We're going to have oatmeal before we open presents. And she would make steel cut oatmeal. She would get the good stuff, even when we were fairly poor. She'd get the good stuff and make a deal out of it. But, oatmeal isn't the fastest thing to ever cook. And she'd be like, okay, we're going to have our oatmeal. And I'd say, cook oatmeal. So it's still kind of a tradition to have oatmeal for breakfast, even if I'm not necessarily, jumping at the presents like I was as a kid. Normally, for us, we like to have sort of the midday, 2 p.m. kind of meal. And last few years, I've been doing a brisket or something along those lines, something big and beefy. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge turkey guy. And when I got to the point where I was starting to make the meat, I was like, well, I guess I can make anything I want. And so it's been, like I say, brisket of late, and that probably will be what happens this year.
Awesome. We're big breakfast people in the Malone house. Whether that happens first thing in the morning, like it did when we were kids, and obviously everybody couldn't wait to get to the tree and presents and all that, so we did it at 8 o'clock in the morning. As we've all gotten a bit older and whatnot, that has kind of gravitated more toward lunches and early dinners, that sort of thing. But the food is always still the same. You can bet it's going to be a lot of breakfast fare. So eggs, grits, bacon, all of that. But another thing that we're going to have is a fair amount of wild game. My dad is an avid turkey hunter, so there's going to be some deep fried turkey breast out there on the counter. We've got plenty of deer hunters in our family and in our crew, so you can bet there's going to be some venison floating around. If you're lucky, it's backstrap, which is the loin of the deer. It's like it's the best part of it. So it's you can bet all of that is going to be on the table, and there's just something to be said. Steverson, you can probably feel me on this, man. There's something to be said for picking up a good piece of perfectly seasoned backstrap and swiveling it around in some grits mixed up with some good over easy eggs, and take it to town with a little orange juice and coffee. Yes,
especially when it's cooked perfectly.
Yep.
I like to a little and I use onion powder, some garlic powder, some seasonings, and just
Yep. I know a lot of people don't like the venison because they say it's too gamey tasting. Trick to that, and I'll go ahead and spit that out for you guys in case you're thinking about trying this over the holidays. Particularly if you're using backstrap, slice it up, put it into an ice bath for a couple of days. Every day, about 3 days. Every day, go in, drain off all your ice, drain off all your water, put in fresh ice water, and just let it bleed out. And by the time you get to about day 3, it's going to be a very light, almost white-colored meat. Some folks don't like that because they feel it takes too much of the flavor out of it. But for folks who don't like that kind of wild, gamey taste, that's a quick way to go ahead and knock that out. So, a little culinary tip for you there. You like to play around with the old venison. All right, that's going to take us down to the hour, which means White Flag and a very special edition of White Flag this time around. So, buckle up. Here we go.
White Flag.
White Flag is, of course, the segment where we kind of look ahead to what's coming up in the coming weeks, whether it's writing stuff, sports stuff, music stuff, you name it. If it's on our brains, we talk about it. But in this being our final episode of 2021, I'd like everybody to just kind of look back on the year real quick. And in addition to, discussing what you're looking forward to, maybe reflect on something that's happened this year that you've been particularly proud of or just something that's been a highlight of 2021. Rob, I'll start with you, man. What say you?
Well, sitting right here talking to you two fine gentlemen, that's a highlight. That's a huge highlight for the year. Thanks again for the opportunity that you gave us, Ian, to make all this happen.
No problem.
I've loved this process. So, I got to thank Chris Kennedy for giving me the opportunity to take over New Mythology Press. That has been an awesome, fun thing, and I'm so excited because I'm just starting. Since we're in Christmas time, I'm starting to unwrap the awesomeness that's inside of this great present that he gave me. Got to thank the readers for giving me a great year with the Ravening of Wolves and with some of the other stuff I did and with the excitement I've seen for all those people who are wanting to see more fantasy stuff through New Mythology Press. So the two big things have to be Dudes and New Mythology Press.
Awesome. How about looking ahead to 2022? Anything you're most excited about? Obviously going to keep on with those, but anything else? Writing projects, cons, etc.?
Well, I better put this one first. I'm getting married in June. I'm looking forward to that.
Why am I just now hearing about this? Dude,
I don't know. I put it on social media all over the place months ago when it happened.
I did not see that, but that's not beyond Facebook and Twitter to not show me the stuff I'm actually looking for. I get plenty of bot tweets from Neutrogena or whatever, but freaking man, far be it from me to actually get the content I want because of their algorithm. Dude, congratulations, man. I had no effing idea that had happened. That is spectacular. Congratulations.
Well, I'm excited too, and she's definitely out of my league, but I'm willing to live with that, and I'm excited for us to get firmly attached. I say this, we're 6.5 years into our relationship, and getting stronger by the day. So awesome. I don't anticipate this one ending anytime soon.
Awesome.
I'm, also looking forward to New Mythology and, hoping Dudes in Hyperspace blows up next year and all of these nice things. And I've got 2 novels I've got planned out but yeah, getting married.
Awesome. Heck yeah. So Kevin, looking back on 2021, we can talk about that. But as far as looking ahead to 2022, good luck topping matrimonial bliss. But please try.
That's not going to happen. Yeah, 2021 was a good year. They actually got to work on the script for the movie, on my books becoming movies. And I look forward to 2022 being able to announce, when production will start and that kind of thing. So it's not quite at that point. And obviously I don't announce or talk about things until it's time for them to do it. And that's contractual. So, I can't spill stuff before it's time to spill stuff. So we'll see what happens in the year ahead on that. CKPI was a big opportunity, and we talked to Chris about it last spring, and it's just now really getting into full swing at Chris Kennedy Publishing International is a big thing. I think I had 4 novels come out in this last year. Fantasy, a redacted book in the 4HU, a book of my own short stories came out, and then I wrote the one with Casey Zell. So looking to put 4 or 5 out next year too. And then there was a lot of short stories. I still owe Rob a short story right now. Just look forward to more writing. And then narrowing my schedule down a little bit. I don't think I'll do as many short stories next year as I did. Just overcommitted myself to those.
Yeah,
I got to tone it down a little bit because the CKPI takes hours during the day and then I write at night. And so,
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. One of the things I'm looking forward to doing in 2022, goal of mine, I actually just finished reading a really good book on this from Christy Wright, managing my time. You know, I have a lot on my plate, and it's not insurmountable between day job and writing and podcasting and family and church and all the other stuff that we do. But I definitely need to get better about organizing my time. I am notorious, particularly when we get to writing, that I'll look up and I just spent, 45 minutes banging out a character bio that frankly I didn't have to spend on that. So switching things off and saying, okay, I have spent, enough time on social media or, generating social media content. Now it's time to move on and do something else. And, there are other things on my priority list that I have to get knocked out, whether it's writing, work related, or whether it's family time. So just being a better steward of my time is something that I want to do in 2022. As far as things looking back on 2021, dude, I got to really delve into the world of collaborating with another author to do not one but two novels. And that would be 3 Steps to Oblivion and The Street Survivors that I wrote with Chris Kennedy. It was an awesome experience. It really was. Chris's writing style, his writing style and his writing process are very different than mine. And God bless that man. He was patient with me and let me come around on the wagon to figure out how we were going to make that work, he and I. And we got it put together, and we got it put together and submitted on deadline. So really proud of that. But it was just a super cool learning experience to work with another writer and be able to brainstorm ideas and have another human being on the other end of the line to be like, dude, we can do this. Oh, that'd be awesome. We got to do that. Oh, but if we do that, we can do this. And this is that. And it goes. And that's the fun of this business. And we've talked about it on this show before, the community. Getting together at conventions with other writers and snapping out ideas and stuff, being able to do that for the duration of something as extensive as a novel, not once but twice this year, was a heck of a lot of fun. Also in 2021, great to bring on sponsors for a podcast. I love doing this job. I thoroughly enjoy talking with you gents, and I think we've built a really fun platform here that caters to a cool audience. But it's a lot of work, and it sure does make it a lot sweeter when you've got people coming along on board that not only help pay the bills, but also help to grow your audience and believe in what you're doing as much as we do and help us, take our podcast and our show and our content to new ear holes. Big fan of that. And not only did we get 1, but 2 of those this year, with Chris Kennedy Publishing coming on board as a presenting sponsor, and with IASFA coming on board as the presenting sponsor for our Podmail segment. Just really, really thankful for those folks and glad to have them on board. Really excited about new things to come in 2022. So, all right, I think that's going to go ahead and close us on out for this one. Thank you to you guys, the listeners, for a fabulous year of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. You guys are the reason why we do this, man. As always, if you love this show, if you listen to it on YouTube, like it, smash it, subscribe to it, all those cool, trendy Gen Z terms that I'm probably using out of context, but you get the idea, go do those things. If you subscribe on a podcast platform that lets you leave stars and reviews, do that. It helps bump us up the ratings, helps people find us that might not actually be actively looking for us. Really appreciate that. Thanks again to our sponsors, as mentioned, Chris Kennedy Publishing, the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. Great folks there. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com. Go to iaspa.org. Find yourself books, authors, series. It's out in spades, people. Go find it, and by all means, enjoy yourselves over the holidays. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all of that good stuff from us on the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. And we will see you next year right here, same bad time, same bad channel. Y'all take it easy, all right? See ya.